All right, welcome to the Primetime Night Owls show, the weekly show. Myself and Matt Smith. And wait, Matt, are you there, Matt?
Oh, I'm here. I'm here, Brian. I
Okay,
am here, buddy.
I don't see you, Matt.
That's very weird. I don't know why. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix this. Just a second. Hold on.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry. It's weird settings. I just got new computer. You know what I mean? Like a new setup. It doesn't really
yeah.
work like the old one does. And sometimes you just need an extra second.
All right, you're kind of like the Buffs, needing a little bit of time to get going. All right, what? Oh, Matt, Matt. You told me to trust you, and I'm not liking that I trusted you.
Happy birthday, Brian!
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
One more day.
One
One
more
more
day.
day. That's it.
I am living up the last 10, 12 hours of being in the 40s.
All right, you have to give me a second here.
Okay.
Oh, wait, there's one more part of it. I forgot. There's one more part.
Uh-oh.
Your birthday card, of course. We could not forget your birthday card. One more time. Five
Awesome.
zero for Brian.
That's a big number, Matt. I don't like that. All right, I'm going to walk off this show. Remember Irv Brown used to say that? He used to, joke
Happy
with that.
birthday, Brian.
Thank you.
50 years. Give me a
Thank
sec.
you. Matt, can you hear me? Okay, Matt's cleaning up the birthday part of it. Yes, Buff fans. On Tuesday, October 29th, I do turn 50. And yeah, people say I don't look 50. I don't know. I feel 50 sometimes, but yeah, it's a big number. Big milestone birthdays for myself and Miss Peggy, who is turning 100 in a couple of weeks, on November 17th. So, she's a super fan and obviously a bigger deal to Buff fans than I am, but a couple of milestone birthdays for myself and Peggy. And yeah, I feel all of 50. And this is my, I think, 10th, yeah, 10th full-time season on the beat. So when I started as the full-time CU football beat writer. Now I covered it part-time, helping out. I didn't travel all the time when I first started doing it, but when I started as a full-time Buffs beat writer, I was actually in my 30s, the last few months of my 30s, but still.
Unbelievable.
And now here I
Where's the
am.
time go?
I don't know, Matt. It's
Where's the
just,
time go? I
I don't know.
appreciate you hanging in there talking to people. I'm
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Well,
Happy birthday, Brian.
thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay, so 50. All right. Well, since you're the old fart in the show, give me some
Thanks.
wisdom. Give me some. Yo, you're welcome. This is
Yeah.
what I'm here for. Give me a little wisdom.
I'm gonna give you some wisdom that pertains to our show and to what we cover with the Buffaloes, and that is, um, enjoy every minute of watching guys like Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, because in my time, covering this program and really watching sports, you don't see guys like this very often. And all these years I've been covering the Buffs, clearly CU has not been Alabama and Georgia, things like that. So it's more unique for us to see guys like this, but we don't see guys like this. So we don't see teams like this very often, Matt. I mean, this is only the second time in my time covering the Buffs. 15th year covering them, 10th year as a full-time beat writer, but 15 years covering them. This is only the second time that they've made it to made bowl eligibility in a real season. I'm not counting 2020, and I did get to go to a bowl game in 2020, so I should count it. But this is only the second time in a real season. So that's my wisdom for you: is enjoy what we get to watch because it's fun.
That's good wisdom. I like it, and I think it's just well, let's apply it to all of life, right? Like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
live in appreciation, be grateful each moment, because you never know what's coming around the corner.
And you know what? Frankly, enjoy. And I always like the phrase "enjoy the journey." And
Yeah,
Coach Prime was asked last week about, it's the kind of the home stretch of him coaching his sons, and he said, "Yeah, I don't like to think about that," but he mentioned that picture that was taken. Was that by you? against Arizona. When him and Shiloh are walking down, and and Bucky is in the photo as well. Well, I'm feeling a little bit of that as well as my kids get older, and two of them moved out of the house in August, and another one's a senior in high school, the other one's a freshman, and they just kind of get old. So yeah, enjoy the journey a little bit, and there's times I go on social media, I'm like, man, I am way too old to deal with some of this stuff I'm seeing on social media. And so enjoy the journey. Let's have fun, everybody.
Well, now that you're a little bit more of an empty nester, I mean, look with the cost of living these days, sounds like you
Yeah.
got an extra room. I might need a place to crash, Brian. So,
Yeah.
I hope you're not getting used to being an empty nester because old Matt's moving in.
Yeah. Let me talk to the wife about that
Yeah,
first.
yeah, exactly. 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 Well, happy birthday, buddy. I know it's
I
tomorrow
appreciate it.
officially, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
see, right on time. I'm the first one to wish
You
you a
are.
happy 5-0. Oh.
You are the first one, which makes me mad at you because it is 50. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you're pushing me
Better
out the 40s door earlier than everybody else.
better to be over the hill than under it, Brian.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let's move on
Yeah.
from that because I don't want to talk about my age much longer. But the Buffs obviously got a nice win the other day. And it was one that we talked about, Matt, last week, that this is one that I felt going in the season there was 4 games that they needed to win, and they won all 4. So those 4 are done. They won all. It was North Dakota State, CSU, Baylor, and this one. Now, this one was a tougher one going into it than we thought it was going to be, but they went out and beat a pretty good football team. And that's I'll ask you this because Adam and I were talking about this. Adam Munster Tiger and I were talking about this walking back to the press box the other night. Where does this rank as far as obviously the best wins CU's had under Prime are TCU because of what it meant, and UCF because I think that was a coming out party for this team. But as far as the best team CU's beaten, I think it might be this last week.
Yeah, there's a good argument to be made for it. There is. Cincinnati's a good football team. They're rock
Yeah,
solid,
yeah,
right? Like their offense proved to be less dynamic than I thought they might be capable of. Although when you look back at their season-long numbers offensively, they're not overwhelming. They're just very solid. And what
yeah,
Colorado did was what I think they've been doing defensively here over the better part of the last month. And it's kind of the old Bill Belichick adage where you want to make your opponent play left-handed, take away
yeah,
what they do best. And against Kansas State, they failed to do that because DJ Giddens ran all over them and
yeah.
still should
Right,
have won that football game. Well,
right.
outside of that, UCF, they basically did that. They were averaging almost 400 yards on the ground per game, which is why they were winning. We now see, right?
Yeah,
If you don't allow them to run for 400 yards a game, they're a mediocre football team. And that
right.
has played out over the season, right? I mean, not that they're a bad football team, but they're just not what maybe we thought they could be or what they were being lauded as, and certainly what we kind of talked about them as heading into that game. And you
Yeah.
kind of go back and you go, well, they took KJ Jefferson pretty much on the ground away, right? He
Hmm.
only got loose in the second half. RJ Harvey had the big wheel route, which they have not figured that out.
No.
They've got to tighten that up. That is
Yeah.
that's killed them more than a few times this year.
Yep.
Anyway, but then you move forward and they did the same against CSU, right? I mean, Horton didn't play, but outside of that, they limited their rushing attack. And then
Yep.
the next week with Baylor, their running game didn't really get off the ground. It was Sawyer Robertson on the ground who was really the
Yep.
one who hurt them, and they were able to win despite all of that. And then you move forward and look at what they did to Cincinnati. Cincinnati, I mean, they ran the ball, but they grinded it out. It wasn't like, what did Kiner finish with? 19 carries, something like that?
Yeah. Let me see here. 17 for 94.
And how about Pryor? How many?
He only had 5 carries for 25.
Okay, so you hold them to 22 rushing attempts, where that's a Cincinnati team that wants to run the ball
Yeah.
about 30, 35 times a game on you. And they
Yeah.
couldn't because you got them in a hole.
Now
So,
they finished with 32 attempts because Sorsby runs a little bit too.
right, 100%. But I
Yeah.
mean, they had to do that late into the game when,
Right.
I mean, how much time did they kill in the second half because they had to run the football just to move it? That's
Yeah.
that's eventually all they could do. They
Yeah.
tried to pass, but Colorado limited Xavier Henderson to 1 catch for 11 yards. So when you're able defensively to take away what your opponent does really well, when you've got the type of offense that Colorado has, you're a really tough out. And what we're
Yeah.
seeing is them play consistently. And that has really been the key to their turnaround because we talked about last year, they didn't form a good identity. Well, they're forming the identity, the balanced identity, the dangerous offense identity, because not necessarily because I'm going to hang 50 on you, but
Yeah.
good luck picking what you want to stop play to play to play. It's
Yeah.
exactly why, and I know I'm rambling, but it's exactly why on fourth down at Arizona, they played single coverage. What do you want to take away? Our ground game? Do you want to try and man up across the outside? Great. We'll beat you with Travis. The
Yeah.
second touchdown against Cincinnati for Travis at the end of the first half that swung the game. You're going to play man coverage? Really? Because you're so worried about what we're doing? We got a couple of timeouts. We could hit you in the middle of the field. Great. We'll hit you on the outside for Travis. So
Yeah.
it's all coming together, and they're doing it against better quality opponents, and they're growing each week. And man, they have put themselves squarely in the Big 12 hunt.
Yeah, no question. And I'll say this about, I mean, Cincinnati's offense. I agree with you that they weren't as dynamic as we thought, but I give CU a lot of credit for that. That offense for Cincinnati is better than what they looked like in Boulder because CU made them look like that, and I think that played into CU's strength a little bit. And that you mentioned Xavier Henderson. He's a really good receiver, and his one catch came with about 5 minutes left in the game, which and for a little bit I'm thinking, man, Travis is locking him down. But I'm looking around like it's not just Travis. It was DJ, it was Preston Hodge. I mean, they all locked him down and it was impressive. And Corey Kiner is another one of those really good running backs in the Big 12 that still didn't get 100 yards against CU. And so I thought that played really well into CU's strengths. And this defense to me, Matt, is not a great elite defense in my opinion, but this is a defense that now gives you a shot every week. And that's what I thought coming into the season. Like if this defense, they gave about 35 points a game last year. And I thought if this defense can cut a touchdown off of that, they're going to win a lot of football games because that gives you a shot. I don't even know what the number is. I should look it up, but it's better than that. They've cut more than a touchdown off of what they were giving up last year. And they give you a shot every week. And when you play defense like that, and you've got Shedeur Sanders, you've got a shot to win every week. And, you know, I'm looking ahead with this statement here, but like I look at November and I'm like, they should go 4-0 in November and finish 10-2 because of what the schedule looks like and because of what I'm seeing from CU. But the bottom line for me, Matt, is that this team is getting better as the season goes along, and that's what's impressive to me. And I think I tweeted out last week, but that's the biggest comparison for me between this team and 2016, which was the only other really good football team I covered at CU. But 2016 and 2024 went about it very differently, right? But the one similarity to me, and you can tell me if you agree or not, is that this team and that team got better as the year went along. They both had a big game on the road that kind of, I think, sparked things and generated a lot of confidence. Oregon in 2016, UCF in 2024, that games that were like, ooh, we are pretty good. And then they carried it on from there.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to look at it that way, I think there's actually more than a few similarities, actually,
There
if you
are,
want to
but
point.
that's the big one for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Again, and that was one of Oregon's quote unquote down years compared to what they had been, right? And
Right.
UCF, right at
And
the
same with
beginning,
UCF.
100%. And
Yeah.
and even though UCF wasn't Oregon, look at the margin of victory at UCF versus what it meant at Oregon. It was just significant to get over the
Right.
hill at Oregon because it
Yeah.
was Oregon. But at UCF, it
Mm-hmm.
was like, no, okay, this is a solid opponent, but you took him out to the curb and spanked them is what you did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you're 100% right. That is a similarity as well. And,
And
and
in a
you talk,
way, Matt, I'll say
yeah.
this. In a way, they sort of broke that Oregon team. I think they broke this UCF team.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of gave you a little pushback because I was like, hold on, it's a little early, but
Yeah.
so far,
Yeah.
they did give Iowa State a run for their money. They should have beat
They
Iowa
did.
State.
Yep.
They should have beaten. That would have helped a ton, by the way. But they have kind of reverted back. They still have some talent, but they've also lost players too. So it's a double-edged sword. But I'll tell you this: they haven't looked the same before and after that game, after that Saturday afternoon or
Right.
evening. That's for
Yeah.
sure. So that definitely lends a lot of credence to that
Right.
statement.
Right.
But I will say another thing you mentioned is that they're getting better. The one thing that 2016 team did that you and I have discussed on this show before is they adapted. Near the
Yep.
end of the year, they had to start running the football more. They went away from a lot of what they did through the air, and they started running Cepho and QB powers, and they really started
Mm-hmm.
grinding out hard yardage, extending drives. Well, that's what this team has done. And I
Yeah.
went back actually, and I want to get into this game a little bit with you too. But since we're here, I went back and kind of looked at some of what I had said to pull my own receipts after the Nebraska game just to kind of feel where I was at. man, it's a 180, right? Everything that we were talking about they needed to do, they have done and proved they could do. Now to the point
Mhm.
where I legitimately have faith week to week to week that we're going to see a version of a consistent product. And that was
Yeah,
not the case at all to start the year. The
yeah,
team they are now, the coaching staff that they are now, compared to who they were game one, night and day difference.
yeah,
And it's just that's the reason why they are where they are. They've adapted because they've taken on the whatever it takes mentality to win football games. That's above all
yeah.
else. It's above
Mhm.
the criticism, it's above everything else. They're focused on winning, and I think it
Yep.
has directly resulted in performance on the field and better camaraderie. You have better coaching staff, you have better players, and it's all coming out in the wash. And now heading into the home stretch of the season, they've got everybody's attention.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. I mean, I saw on First Take today, I think it was First Take, that Stephen A. Smith is like they are the story in college football, and Deion Sanders is his coach of the year. I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't know if they're the story. They are a big story. Deion's in the conversation, no question about that. I think coach of the year, that's a whole other discussion here, but I mean, what Indiana's doing is pretty impressive too. Um, I'm not sure if Coach Prime is the coach of the year in the Big 12, even because of what Kalani Sataki is doing at BYU. I mean, they were supposed to be really bad, and they're dominant. I mean,
Yeah, but
they're
they've been that level for a while, considering the
not in the
turnaround.
Big 12.
Well, that's fair, but he's
Yeah,
also, I mean, to think that he wouldn't be a front runner, I would disagree if you wouldn't say that he's at least a top five candidate. I
I
mean, I
didn't.
think you,
Of
no,
course, I'm.
no,
I'm
no,
just
but I
saying.
would,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's halfway through the season. We're like three-quarters of the way through the
right, right,
season. I
right.
mean,
Yeah,
nobody's getting those awards for a while. And quite
right.
frankly, I know he doesn't care about that award truthfully because
Yeah,
he cares about the success. And if you get the success, everything else comes with it. It's kind of what we've been talking about. Heisman, all that stuff, don't worry about it because
right.
if he gets to 10, it's automatic. I'm sorry. If he gets to 10 and he doesn't get it, it's egregious. They were 1-11 with an average margin of defeat of damn near 30 points 2 years ago. If they get to 10 and he
Yeah,
does not get it, it is almost heresy. Like then it's clear bias to me. Unless Indiana runs the table, right?
yeah. I
Like
was gonna
there's like
say.
or
Yeah,
BYU runs the table, like those would be the only things. But even still, think about maybe Indiana, but they had Michael Penix Jr. I mean, that wasn't a bad football team a few years ago.
yeah. That was a
Colorado
few
came
years
from
ago,
the
though.
depths of hell.
Yeah,
I would vote him coach of the year if they got to 10. I personally would. And maybe I'm
yeah,
biased, but to see what they've done in the turnaround that they've made so far, you've got to finish it. And look, I mean,
yeah.
coffee's for closers here. So are coach of the year awards.
Right.
Okay, let make no mistake.
Yeah, and the thing is, I hate about the discussions like this is you almost have to put someone down to lift someone else up, and I don't want to do that because they're all great. But
It's just
D
you and I talking.
I know. Well, yeah, but people listening, Coach Prime certainly there's you'll have the argument for it, and absolutely he would be a very worthy candidate if Indiana's 12-0,
Yeah.
uh, or even 11-1. I mean, Indiana. I mean, come on, that's impressive. So we'll see. But there's a lot of time for that. I do want to point out real quick. I mentioned the defense. I said I know it's more than a touchdown per game. They gave up 34.8 points per game last year. This year it's 22. They're almost two touchdowns better than they were last year, which is unbelievable. Offensively, they were at 28.2 last year. They're about a field goal more than that this year. And that's why they're so much better. The offense is better. The defense is much better. And it's been impressive to watch this team grow because I know I think back to people don't like us comparing last year to this year, and I get it. So let's just compare this year to this year. Coming out of Nebraska, it was like, oh boy,
Mm-hmm.
this one is this team is on the verge here of is this going to be a long season, or are they going to are they going to bounce back here? And I remember I told you this before, but I remember being on the radio in Denver before that CSU game, and your buddy DMAC asked me a question. He said, "What does this game mean for CU?" And I said, "It's the season." And he was like, "Whoa!" I go, "No, really. If they lose in Fort Collins, this season is could go down the tubes." Well, they won impressively, and they've outside of not being able to finish against K State. I mean, they're 5-1 since leaving Lincoln.
Oh, I know. which is why I wanted to go back and listen to my comments since the Nebraska game,
Yeah.
because it was like, hey, look, this is a 10 alarm fire. Now it's time to
Yeah.
get really serious, because if you don't, you're going to squander an opportunity. And
Yeah.
don't tell me they didn't make a massive shift, because you'll remember the coaching staff came out and they were way more intense in practice the next
Yeah.
week. They ratcheted things up, they turned the
Yeah.
dial up. And that's why I keep talking about the improvement that they've made. And the one thing that I think it makes it a better story that they've weathered the adversity mid-year, made those mid-season adjustments,
Oh
and
yeah.
have reaped the rewards to the
Hmm.
degree that they've had. That to me is more impressive than if you had just done it like the whole time. Look at the
Yeah.
turnaround that they've made in season, because I even said after the Nebraska game in my recap, I was like, the team I'm watching right now was the team I stopped watching for the most part at the end of last year. And if
Yeah.
that doesn't change, then there's a significant problem, because you've got everything you need. The tools are here. So
Yeah.
if not, what's the problem? And look at what they've done with look at what they've built with those tools. And the one hot take that I had before the year, and I think it was in the conversation with you when we were talking about, well, would they average 30 points a game or not? And you were like, yes, they will average 30 points. I was like, hold on. I
Yeah.
mean, that's tough to do. And they're like right on it right now.
Yeah.
But my hot take was that by the end of the year, they would be relying on their defense way more than it looks like, because it looked on paper like they had the potential to have a really good unit. It was
Yeah.
just hard to see to envision what it was actually going to be as a finished product, because they weren't that. They weren't a well-oiled machine, and it was like a paper mache collage project of talent from across the country, and tons of credit has to go to the entire defensive coaching staff, because, and this is really where I was trying to get to last week with Coach Prime. Look at how many guys have never technically done it at this level in their positions, and look
Yeah.
at how much progress they've made in a short period of time. That speaks volumes to Coach Prime's hiring ability and his
Yeah.
judge of character, right? Like,
Right.
these are all things that needed to be proven in the wash. And yeah, okay, maybe they have happened before at a different level, but
Hmm.
now they're happening on the big stage, and that's a
Yep.
big deal that deserves to be brought up, and it
Right.
deserves to be mentioned. And so I'm glad that we're starting to see these things come out, because those were some of my biggest questions to enter the season, and they've answered those to the point where I've got legitimate faith moving forward. They're going to come out and bring their best to the finish line. And you said that they've got a great chance to go undefeated here in November. Brian, if they stay healthy, it looks really good, but it doesn't mean you don't go 1-0, but that's a great position to be in. It's
Yeah.
a and it
Hmm.
deserves a lot of praise. It deserves a lot of praise.
Well, and some of the stuff you mentioned is, to me, one of the best arguments for Coach Prime being a Coach of the Year candidate is that they've reinvented themselves during the season.
Right.
And that to me is one of the best signs of a good coach, is when they can recognize things mid-season and shift. And to your point, it's one thing when, all right, you did all these things in the off season, and that's a big deal. But it's one thing to do that. It's another thing to do all those things, and
Right.
then a couple weeks in, you're like, what the heck's going on here? And then you shift, and now all of a sudden it's better. And so the the self-awareness to look in the mirror and say, we have got to fix this now. I think that's the most impressive thing about what he's done. um, I think it's been cool watching Coach Prime grow as a coach from last year to this year, and from September to now almost October. I think it's been fun
Almost
watching him,
November.
and yeah, almost November. And I wonder what he would say, and we can ask him that this next week. But I wonder what he would say about his growth as a coach, because I know he's been coaching for a while, but it is very different coaching youth league and high school and even Jackson State, as opposed to now coaching every level you get up, you go higher. I think it's different, and I think that he's learned things every step along the way, I would guess, because that's what people do. But I've seen him grow as a coach, and it's been kind of fun to watch that.
Tremendously. Tremendously. It's been one of my favorite parts of the year. It
Yeah.
has, because
Hmm.
because anybody out of anyone I've ever covered, he gets the most hate. And
Yeah.
I don't focus on a lot of that stuff, but some of the ways that he gets treated are unbelievably unfair. Now, like from a business perspective, I understand it, as does he, by the way. He was in the media for almost 20 years. He gets
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff is just totally out of line. And for that, I'm glad he's had the opportunity to shove it back in people's face, but they've earned that right.
Yeah.
That's a right that they have earned, and
Yeah.
nobody can poke holes in it, which is why coming out of the Nebraska game, I
Hmm.
I also said, look, now the jig is up. Like everybody thinks it's just Travis and Shedeur. You have the rest of the season to prove that it is a real football team.
Yeah.
And 3/4 of the way through, they have done that and more. Oh, by the way, to the
Yeah.
point where you're hearing Stephen A. and Paul Feinbaum and the who's who now talk about it. They're doing it subdued, but they're
Yeah.
talking about it. If Colorado has a successful November, they will be the biggest story in college football unequivocally. Because
Yeah.
if you're talking about, which is exactly why I think if you get to 10, remember now, this isn't the NCAA that runs the college football playoff. This is
Right.
ESPN and their
Right.
college football playoff committee. This
Yeah.
is a tournament for ratings. If you have a
Right.
10-win, healthy Colorado team, and at 10 wins, you're telling me Travis Hunter's not going to win the Heisman Trophy? If
Right.
he's healthy and plays every game and
Right.
produces, he'll
Right.
win the Heisman Trophy. They're not keeping them out,
Yeah.
even if they don't compete for the Big 12 title. That's the truth. They'll compete for an at-large spot. There's no way. If they'll be right on the cusp, if not, okay?
Yeah.
And it just depends upon the vote, I would guess. But they've got a it's Coach Prime, right? They got a Coach
Right.
Prime
Right. Right.
card that
Right.
they can play, and you've seen the ratings. So
Yeah. A couple of quick things. One, as far as Coach Prime growing as a coach, I don't know if you saw this clip or not, but I think it was on Well Off, and it was the end of that first half. And one of the narratives on Coach Prime is that he's all for his sons. He's trying to get Shedeur stats, all this stuff. And
yeah,
there's this clip where they get the ball at the end of the first half,
one of the
and
old narratives. I mean, haven't
right.
we put that to bed? You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah,
most people have, but
yeah.
you still see it. And there's a clip where he's on the sideline. He's saying, "We need 5 more yards to get in Mata's range." He's looking for a field goal. And what happens? Shedeur's like, no, we got Travis, and throws a touchdown pass. And so Coach Prime was playing it like a coach and saying, let's get 3 points. Let's get 3 points. And, they end up throwing a touchdown pass. Um, so I just want to make that quick point. But then
Analytically.
analytics, who is that guy analytics?
Hmm.
I,
It's he's the one with the joystick. And
right,
look,
right.
I'll tell you, the last few weeks, what I'd say he's batting like 95%, which is
Yeah,
pretty damn good.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, he's doing a great job. And, as far as, because you went there, I'll go here. As far as the rankings and the playoff go, I will say this: they're in the top 25 now in the AP poll, which I know people say once the CFP comes out, AP doesn't matter. It matters a little bit because the committee is going to look at those things. Whatever the ranking is, AP or CFP, when you get in, the key is to get in. Once you're in there, if you keep winning, all you're going to do is climb.
Mhm.
That's all you're gonna do as an AP voter. I mean, that I don't drop teams when they win. There are times I guess that I may drop, like in Ohio State if they're number 3 and they barely beat Purdue. You might drop them a spot or two, but like once you're in, basically you climb. And so it's gonna be very interesting those first CFP rankings, which come out next week. Colorado doesn't play this week, and so they get to watch some other teams maybe slip up this weekend. And if next week they're in there, say 25, 24, that's a really good thing because you start off, you're in, and then if you just keep winning, all you're going to do is climb. And now all of a sudden, to your point, I totally agree with you. If they're in that 14, 13, 12 range, they're going to find a way to get them in because, and it's almost, this is a topic for, I just thought of this, but this will be something that we can discuss later because there's a lot of football that has to be played. Would it almost be better if the Buffs weren't in the Big 12 title game? If they're 10-2 and they get to just watch BYU and Iowa State play while they just kind of sit back. If they're like, let's say they're number 11 in the CFP going into that week, is it almost better that they don't have to, potentially get a loss and they can just sit back and say, yep, we're in?
I mean, I'd like to compete for a conference title if it's on the
Sure.
table. If you're going to
Obviously.
offer it to me, yeah,
Obviously.
yeah. So I don't know.
I wouldn't say, let me
I get
rephrase
your.
that.
I know where you're coming
Not
from.
better. I'm just saying,
No, no, no. I know where you're coming
could
from.
that be
I
could
think
that
it
be
would be an.
something yeah, if they don't get in, could you look at that and say, okay,
No, I
we're
got you.
still okay. You know what I
I
mean?
got you. It would be
Yeah.
advantageous. It would be
Yeah.
very advantageous. They've got
Yeah.
again. They've got an ace up their sleeve, and they've
Yeah.
got a bit of a, you know, they got a certain type of card. They got a card that
Yeah.
kind of outweighs everything. I don't want to talk about what type of card right now, just
Yeah.
right now, but they've got
They
one type of card.
they have the star card. That's for
The
sure.
star card. Thank you.
Yeah.
The star
Yeah.
card. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they got, I mean, honestly, they do have, and whether you're going to put
Yeah.
two of these buffs in the Heisman, race and put them in New York or not, we'll see. But there is no question they are two of, if not the two biggest stars in college football.
Travis and Shedeur, they are
Yeah.
the biggest stars in college football. No, unequivocally. They have the most name brand value
Right. It's name brand and all
recognition.
that stuff. Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
think even more than Arch Manning to a degree right now.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
their
Right.
faces are everywhere.
Especially because Arch isn't playing.
Right, well, 100%, and
Yeah.
obviously Manning is Manning, and everybody will
Yeah.
understand. But outside of that would be their only rival,
Yeah.
and it has been fascinating because I think last year you saw a lot more of, well, they're not really that good. I'm talking about Shedeur and
Yeah.
Travis because the team didn't have a lot of success. But the truth is that there was not enough around them for their brilliance to truly shine because everybody else was doing their job consistently
Right.
enough. And
Right. Right.
now you're seeing it. Even still, they had the years that they had, right? I mean, Shedeur still threw for over 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, 3 interceptions with a 70% completion percentage last year.
Right.
It's not like he had a
Right.
bad year, but
Right.
but the elite guys, he wasn't the numbers wise, he wasn't with Nix and Penix and Caleb, right? He wasn't at that level because
Right.
he was running for his life on every play.
Yeah.
And they've schemed around it like we talked about. They've changed the way they've done things to kind of mask their weaknesses and emphasize their strengths. And I would just again, which is why I say that it is so important to recognize the growth of the coaching staff because it was one of my bigger questions. And you could say, well, you didn't believe maybe, but I
Yeah.
just am one of those guys, especially considering the fact that we've seen so much bad football at CU. I
Yeah.
needed to see good football played at Folsom Field before I was willing to go, yeah, that's good football. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
needed to see good football. And now we've seen it. We have a sample size that I believe in. And
Yeah.
moving forward here, as long as everybody stays healthy, I'm very optimistic about what the rest of the season holds.
Yeah. Me too. And my colleague Pat Rooney pointed out in his column after the game the other day, as far as good football at home, that was one of the best home games they've played in a really long time. When you look at, I mean, even the first three this year, as Pat pointed out, it was like you beat North Dakota State, and it was like, okay, got through that one. You beat Baylor, and it was like, whoa,
Oh, hold on.
got through that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kansas State, they lost, and you look at last year, and the home games were Nebraska was obviously a really good game, but CSU, you needed that fourth quarter comeback by Shedeur. There have not been that many impressive wins at home like we saw on Saturday night. So that was fun to watch. Anything else on Cincinnati before we go? We want to talk Heisman race. Anything else on Cincinnati before we turn the page?
Oh, I think yeah. I mean, we barely really even talked about the
I
game
know it seems like
specifically.
it almost feels like that one's all right. Let's move on. Let's go.
I know. I would. There's a couple things we should talk about because when we talk about the growth, let's just at least how they're growing,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, when it's 14-14, you're like, okay, maybe we're in for a bit of a shootout. It did
Yeah.
feel immediately like Cincinnati was going to have to answer almost every drive, which
Yeah.
Colorado was in the driver's seat. But it was the swing. Obviously, the fourth down stop was the biggest play of the game at the end of the first half, second quarter. You get the Travis touchdown, completely
Mhm.
swings the game. You get the ball back, don't score, but defense gets another stop. Then you
Yeah.
felt, okay,
Yeah.
we've come out of the locker room. Defense is fine, is what you're thinking on the sideline. Offense gets on track. They score, and game's pretty much over.
Yeah.
Down the stretch, they should have closed better, as Coach Prime noted. It's the second week in a row. They've been a little bit choppy into the finish. The only good part about their schedule for them is there hasn't really been a team yet that will make them pay for that if
Right.
if you slide like that. And I
Mhm.
don't know that there's one left on the schedule, but if
Right.
you do get into postseason play and you do go undefeated, you better make sure that that's ironed out because you won't advance
Yeah.
or you won't win the bowl game,
The
right?
the
Because you're gonna face a good
yeah.
team.
The team most likely to do that coming up would be Texas Tech. Because
100%.
I mean they got the number one scoring offense in the Big 12 and they can score quickly. So that's the one team that you worry about that could do that. But but you're right. I mean, they do have to close better, but I love that sequence. And Cincinnati, they do score um, twice early, right? And by the way, I was surprised Cincinnati took the ball. They won the coin toss, took the ball. You don't see that very often anymore, but
Well,
um,
there's another sign of they know they need to score points.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. And they did. And to their credit, they did. They answered each of CU's first two touchdowns. But again, Robert Livingston and that defense from that point on, they give up 9 points the rest of the way. And that was impressive. Now, the 9 points in the second half was more than CU usually gives up, but only 9 points after that, after those first couple drives.
And it was really important that they did shore that up because it was
Yeah.
the same way they lost to Kansas State. Those two drives that Cincinnati led, it was Kiner and Kiner and Kiner, and it was Pryor
Yeah.
on the swing route. And
Hmm.
you just went, oh, God, there's a couple things they just haven't ironed out yet. They're
Yeah.
getting exposed on the swing route and man coverage. They've gotten exposed on it like 4 times. It's easy to point and go, well, that's Shiloh. But at the same time, I mean, look at the responsibility that he has. Fix it. Like that's killed them. Do it
Yeah.
differently. It
Hmm.
ain't working. Fix it. I mean, at
Yeah.
this, how sick is everyone of watching them get destroyed? I'm sure they are as well. I
Yeah.
don't understand. I mean, maybe there's something. I'm not a defensive coordinator. They got to figure that out though, because that's all over the tape, and they haven't corrected it yet. And so
Yeah.
you're going, uh-oh. That was my first thought. Was uh-oh. Are they going to be able to slow this running game down? Because Pryor and Kiner are really good backs,
Right.
and Kiner
Hmm.
was bouncing off of guys early, and then they started to shut things down at the line of scrimmage.
Hmm.
They imposed their will physically on Cincinnati, which everybody thought, well, Cincinnati's got the offensive line that started together. Everybody
Yeah.
did last
Hmm.
year. They've got Dante Corleone, and both sides of the ball, they matched physicality. They schemed around what weaknesses are, and they
Yep.
outplayed them, outcoached them, out physicaled them in a dominating fashion. To me, that's their best win at home, even despite the bad finish since Coach Prime arrived. Nebraska's probably a bigger margin, but Nebraska helped them out a ton. Jeff Sims
Right.
couldn't snap the ball. I never felt
Right.
amazing about that win. This one, I said, okay, you didn't have
Hmm.
a good showing at home yet, a dominant one, and now they do to point to. So this is again every week they're just taking the appropriate steps. So
Yep.
I'm very encouraged. And
Yeah.
then I would just say the running game. Sorry, I would just say the running game.
Yeah.
That would be something else we should talk about.
Yeah. The running game certainly sort of like the defense. It's not great, but it's getting the job done and it's getting better. And the defense, it keeps you in games. The running game is keeping them not in games, but you know what I mean. It's a huge key to what they're doing right now. And obviously K-State was different. Program record low, negative 29 yards. But what we've seen the last 2 weeks, that's all we need from the Buffs. Get 100 yards. And they've gotten well over 100 yards the last 2 weeks. And Isaiah Augusta, credit to him, named today the Big 12 newcomer of the week.
Was he?
20,
I didn't see
yeah,
that.
22 carries,
Nice.
91 yards, and a touchdown.
That's
And
awesome.
that's a running back line, Matt. I mean, we
I
don't
know.
see running back lines very often with Colorado, and that's the most carries any CU back has had since Carl Durrell. Well, since Mike Sanford was the interim head coach, and so it's. I was so happy to see that because that's one thing, especially with Augusta, that I'm like, I want to see him carry 15 to 20 times in a game and see what he can do. And he got 22, and I felt bad for him because he was at 95 yards towards the end of that game, gets the carry and slips on the grass for a 4 yard loss, finishes with 91. If he keeps his footing, I feel confident he's going to get 5 yards and get over the century mark. So that's the only thing that kept him, in my opinion, under 100 yards was that slip.
And I'm glad you brought up the Kansas State game with the program low because that's the universe instantly showing you when
Yeah.
you revert back to what kind of buried you, which is what they did. And we brought
Yep.
this up, and I made sure to point this out that over the first bye week, Pat Shermer said, yeah, I evaluated my tendencies. However, we're really a 10 personnel team. So
Mhm.
we'll go back to that. And I
Yeah.
turned it to you and I go, gosh, I hope he doesn't do that because they
Yeah.
they are so much better out of 11 running the football. They need that extra guy. They
Yeah.
do. That's just
Yeah.
something they need right now. They reverted back and it killed them. It
Mhm.
killed them against Kansas State. Well, what have they done the last two games? A
Yeah.
lot more with the tight end on the field, okay?
Yeah.
And it changes the dynamic of their offense because you're putting the defense into conflict. It just does. And
Well,
and yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say real quick on Pat
Yeah.
Shermer. There was that clip on Well Off before the Arizona game where he was adamant. in that team meeting room. He goes, "We have got to run the dang football, and we are going to run the dang football." And that's what they've done the last 2 weeks. And you could tell that's a guy. I've never doubted how much he understands the run game because that's been a big part of him as a coach. And being an NFL guy, you understand that. And he was very adamant and, in that meeting, and they've been pretty good at it since then.
They have been, and everybody understands they're better when they're balanced.
Yeah.
You have to play balanced
Yeah.
at this level, especially in November at this time of year. If you don't run the football, you will lose. These next
Yeah.
4 games, even if you're better on paper than these other teams, if you don't
Yeah.
continue to run the football, you will lose. And look
Right.
what happens this year. And we talked about this too. When you get over the 120-yard mark, that's my, just so everybody out there knows, that's my barometer. If the
Yeah.
Buffs hit 120 rush yards, they win.
Yeah.
They're not losing because you can't stop the offense if that running game gets 120 yards. Why? Because we know Shedeur's already gonna kill you. He's the best in the country. Doesn't matter,
Hmm.
honestly, if Travis is out there or not. They'll figure out ways around it. They're just learning more of who they are. They're kind of breaking from the mold, I think, of what hurt them at times last year, and they are real. Like I talked to guys who played in the NFL, and they're texting me after games, going, "This looks like a real football team."
Yeah.
Like, it is. It is
Yeah.
a real football team.
Right.
And when we talk about how they got better at every position, they did. But they also are starting to understand that they can't get away with some stuff, maybe of who they want to be. They got to be who they need to be. And right
Hmm.
now, they're doing that. And Augusta, as you brought up, probably should have been over 100. And did you also see PFF came out? He led the country this weekend in forced missed tackles with 10.
Really? Wow.
How about
Interesting.
that number? This
Yeah.
is a guy that you and I were pounding the table for of get him the football. He needs to be the lead back. And at the end of the first half, Dallin, I thought, actually, to his credit, had his best game as a Buff, by the way. Dallin Hayden, in my
Yeah. He
opinion.
looked
I
good
thought he
too.
ran the
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah.
He didn't maybe hit the break that he has the last couple of weeks, but it was more consistent, I thought, from a down to down basis, and he was good in the
Yeah.
passing game. However, it was like 6 to 8 carries at the end of the first half. And I did something cool. I got to do another kind of like hands-on learning session with the student journalists up in the broadcast booth. So kind of getting back to my roots doing play-by-play. And so even on the broadcast, I said, like Downs running the ball well. Man, I'd love to see Augusta get over 20 tonight. And they had him at 22. And as you mentioned, it wasn't that it was that he slipped. He kind of got tripped up on Shedeur's feet and he
Yeah.
slipped and it was ended up at 91 yards. But there's no reason this is a team that can't be that or close to that every week. And a lot of it is because of how they're running the football. They're running
Right.
it out of pistol. They're not running it out of 10 personnel. They're doing it
Right.
with the tight end on the field. Savell Spall's in motion and they're getting blocking. Seaton's pulling. Like there's so much stuff that we were asking for. They're
Yeah.
doing it because the reason we brought it up in the first place is because we thought, look, you do this, everything else is going to take care of itself. And it
Right.
has so far. So, again, it just goes back to the adjustments they've made and how much better of a football team they are right now. And if they stay healthy, who knows what they're going to do the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But there's no real ceiling in my eyes.
Well, it's interesting you say, what they want to be as opposed to what they need to be. I actually think that one of the things we're seeing is that this is what they want to be.
Mm,
They're turning into this is what they want to be, in my
right,
opinion.
right.
Because I think that because they know they need to be that, and I think that they're kind of developing that mindset of, yeah, this is what we do. I think this is what we want to do, and it's been fun to watch it because they are better that way. And to your point, the 120 yards, one of the keys to that is that means Shedeur is not getting sacked 5 times and losing 40, 50 yards in sacks. Because you're not going to get 120 yards if you're losing 30, 40, 50 yards in sacks because they're not going to their backs are just not going to run for 170, right? So yeah, there's a key to that. They go hand in hand. That offensive line 2 weeks in a row, I think it's 148, and then what they have the other day against Cincinnati, 123. So 148 yards, 123, and with that, 1 sack in each game. So they're coming together, and it's at a good time. And the bye comes at a good time, as Shedeur mentioned to us the other day. He's banged up. He's not the only one. I'm sure Travis could use another week. Those
Will
linebackers,
Shepherd.
Will Shepherd, but linebackers, Augusta, I'm sure could use after 22 carries. Let's break a little bit. you know, this is a really key year. I don't know how much this will be talked about. I'm going to bring it up right now. For this CU team, we don't have to see 2 buys in a season. the timing of a 2-bye season is huge for this Buffs team, because if there was only one bye and it was several weeks ago, I wouldn't feel as good about this team going into November. I love the fact there's a bye that they can reset a little bit and get healthy going into the last 4 games.
It's something that we talked about at the first bye. If everything goes the way that it's going right now, the season sets up perfectly if you
Yeah.
handle your business. Because after the 3-pack, you had Kansas State, you had at Arizona, and then
Mhm.
you were home to Cincinnati. You had to go 2-1 to still be in the Big 12 title race,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Well, you wanted 3-0. You should have been 3-0. Looking
Yeah.
back, this team should be 7-1,
Yeah.
which just even goes further to the ridiculous turnaround. They
Right.
shouldn't have lost
Yeah.
to Kansas State. However,
Yeah.
they did. So they are where they are. But they've learned from that. They've gotten better because of it. And you're right. They need it right now. I
Yeah.
think altogether, I actually ran into some Buffs fans Sunday morning, and they were like, are we off again? Who are we playing this week? Are we on? I was like, no, they're off. They're off this week, and
Yeah.
they need it. So
Yeah.
it's a good thing. Again, just another mental reset because we talked about this. Okay, Shedeur, Travis, some of the Jackson guys, some of the coaching staff, they have experienced what it's been like to have success late into a season. But there's
Yeah.
a lot of people in that room, players and other staff included, that some of them don't know. Some of them have
Yeah.
no idea what that's like. And they've come
Hmm.
from different programs around the country. And now these are the gold games. That's what Coach Mack called them. I loved that term. I still use it. Remember on the
Yeah.
schedule he had in the
Oh
in
yeah.
the team room
I was just gonna bring that up actually. Yeah.
at the bottom of the schedule, he had the
Yep.
four, like nameplates with the teams, and they were in
Yep.
gold.
Yep.
These are the gold games. These are the wins that you get remembered for, right? Late in the year. I remember the Washington State win in 2016. I remember the Utah win. Sometimes it's tough for me to remember, Stanford 10-7, or for me,
Yeah.
obviously it's different, or Arizona State, but
Ten to
it's the
five, by the way.
10-5. Thank you. Thank you. Good. Yes. That was a good that was such a bad game. But it was a
Right.
great game, but it was a bad game.
Right.
Anyway, but you have to learn to win different type of ways, and that's a great
Yeah.
example of
Yeah.
just finding ways to win. And this team so far has. They will be tested. It
Yeah.
looks like it'll be a breeze at some point, and it may be in Lubbock. They're a dog. I think they're almost
Yeah.
a 5-point dog to Texas Tech as it stands right now. We'll see what that line is. But again, just another instance where okay, you're not expected to win this football game. This is a
Yeah.
tough environment you're going into play. There's a Texas Tech team now. They haven't looked very good the last couple of weeks, so that's a different story. Although,
Yeah.
TCU took care of business and beat them by 1, which really helps things in the Big 12 title race for sure. So, look, Brian, it's
They're not
uncharted.
a bad football team though. I mean, they are 5-3, and they were
Yeah.
that 1 point away from they could be 6-2 as well. Right there
Oh,
with the Buffs. So
100%.
yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying. It's like
Yeah.
you TCU did you a favor. They
Yeah.
they helped you out a lot. Some of the help that
Yeah.
you needed, because we talked
Hmm.
about it. Before you lost to Kansas State, you controlled your own destiny. Well, now you need help, and they got a
Right.
little bit of help. There were
Yeah.
other opportunities. BYU almost lost to Oklahoma State, but Oklahoma State blew it, right? Iowa
Yeah.
State almost lost to UCF, but UCF blew it, right? There's a couple different examples of the last few weeks.
Yeah.
This weekend, Kansas should have beaten Kansas State, but blew
Yeah.
it. You need
Yeah.
some of those eventually to turn over if they're going to play in the Big 12 race.
Yeah. They need those those 3 teams: BYU, Iowa State, and Kansas State. Two of the three of those have got to lose a couple times for
Yeah.
CU to do that. But CU's got to take care of business. So yeah, big one. And we're going to talk about Texas Tech more next week. But Matt, before we finish up, I want to talk about the Heisman race, because that was a topic, in the post game press conference. It was, why is Shedeur not a part of this Heisman race, and why is he not talked about? And so I went and looked right before we started. Okay, this was on USA Today, but it's these odds are from BetMGM as
Okay.
of Sunday. We're doing this on Monday, so this was through Saturday's games. Okay, and they got 10 guys listed on the Heisman list, Heisman odds. Shedeur Sanders is not on the list. Okay. And the obvious ones are at the top. They have the favorite, Dylan Gabriel. Number 2, they have Cam Ward. Number 3, they have Travis. And number 4, it drops off significantly after this, but number 4 is Ashton Genty. Okay. And so I get all of them. Okay. Now, the next 6 are all quarterbacks. Tell me which of these quarterbacks should be ahead of Shedeur Sanders
None.
in this list. I know. You don't even need to hear the names.
Yeah, yeah,
But look at this.
yeah.
I mean, Cade Klubnik. Okay. He's a great player. I get it. Carson Beck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jackson Dart.
Mm-hmm.
What is Ole Miss doing right now? Garrett Nessmeyer.
Mm-hmm.
Drew Alar from Penn State.
Aller, but yeah.
Yeah, Aller. And Jalen Milrow.
Mm-hmm.
They've got all of them on this list, and Shedeur Sanders not in the top 10. How is that possible?
Again, I've said it for a while. It's because his last name is Sanders. If he were Shedeur Johnson or wasn't playing at CU, it would be an entirely different narrative. It just would. And Coach Prime, I had to ask him about it because I felt like it needed to be brought up. I've been pretty upset that he hasn't been recognized because he is so unequivocally, and I know there are a few people who are coming in late with Cam Ward could be QB1. Cam Ward ain't QB1. No
Yeah.
scout. No GM has taken Cam Ward ahead of Shedeur Sanders. Bookmark that, okay? That's no disrespect to
Yeah.
Cam Ward.
Right.
That ain't happening.
Yeah.
I've been talking to NFL scouts all year at every game. That ain't happening, okay? People are flirtatious with that because there are some people that are completely blind, kind of like blinded to the flash. That's all they see. They don't really look at the player because they don't want to look at the player. But every scout that I, excuse me, have respect for, or guys that I talk to played in the NFL, and you brought up Vegas, guess who's still the favorite to go number one overall? It's Shedeur.
Yeah. Right.
So he may not be in that conversation. I brought it up the other night, and Coach Prime obviously brought it up. I've been saying it now for a few weeks that it's ridiculous he's not. You look at what his limitations are around him compared to some of these other guys. You put Shedeur with, I even had the clip last weekend of Cam Ward scrambling around for like 20 seconds in the pocket and nobody was breathing on him. And I go, think about what Shedeur would do if he
Right.
had that kind of time consistently. They just don't.
Right.
So he has to do it a different way. And he does it, in my opinion, still better than everybody. He may not get the Heisman recognition, but at the end of the day, he's going to get the ultimate validation when, in my opinion, he is picked unless they say no thanks to Carolina as the number one player in the 2025 NFL draft.
Yeah. Unless it's Travis. Um, but
Maybe.
I will disagree with you on this. I don't think I don't think that the name is keeping him out of this race. I don't think it's because it's Sanders. I think the name that's keeping him out of this race is Colorado. I think it's because he plays for
Oh, I said,
Colorado.
yeah, the, the
And
the name and who he plays for. That was what I
yeah,
was
but
saying.
I don't think him being Sanders. I don't think that is a factor in my opinion.
Okay.
I think it's where he plays. And um because I look at these guys on the list, okay? If Shedeur is doing exactly what he's doing and he's Sanders and he plays for Clemson, he's high on this list.
Okay.
If he does it for Ole Miss, he's high. If he's the
Valid.
quarterback of Georgia
You're fair.
and
It's
doing
valid.
exactly what he's doing, he's the front runner, in my opinion.
You changed my mind. I, I
So
am I am one person to tell you when I'm wrong, and you know what? I think that's a very valid point. Now,
yeah,
I don't know if he's the front runner, but he would
yeah,
100. It would be undeniable that he would be on there. But there's a reason. I think because he's at Colorado and because who he is. Well, Travis is at Colorado,
right.
right? I mean,
But
but
yeah,
because of he's where he is and who he is, in my opinion, it's a double down. However,
yeah,
you're right. If he was in the SEC and he was promoting their brands and their TV
yeah.
contracts, it would look different. I agree.
But
However, just know he's on my ballot that I
right.
don't have.
But I will say this too, to wrap up the Heisman talk, is that I loved Shadeur's answer to that question because he was asked point blank the other night, "Why do you think you're not in that list?" And I 100% agree with his answer. I think this is the right answer. Is that he said, "Look, they're not going to put two guys from the same team up there," and I would add to this, they're not going to put two guys from Colorado up there. There's still a lot of people that are like, Colorado, come on, you know, they're not going to put two guys. If it was two guys from Georgia or two guys from Alabama, maybe, but not from Colorado. I think that he's totally right. And I also think he's right in this when he says Travis is the best player in college football. And Travis is. And Shedeur, to his credit, and I do believe he believes this when he says, I want Travis to win it. I think Shedeur knows he's not going to win this Heisman Trophy uh, as long as Travis Hunter is healthy and doing what he's doing. And so I think the one good thing I would say about Shedeur not being on this It's just Shador's not going to take any votes away from Travis. And Travis can maybe go win this thing because he's not getting votes taken away by his teammate. But um, I
That's
give
not a bad
Shedeur
point either.
I give Shedeur credit for that answer because he's right. I think the fact they're not going to put two guys from CU up there, and let's be honest, Shedeur is the second best player on this team, and
Yeah, but he's the most important.
he's the most valuable. Yes, but to me, the Heisman Trophy goes to the best player in college football,
It does. It does.
and Shedeur is the second best player on this team, right? And he knows that, and there's no shame in that. If you're the second to Travis Hunter, that's okay,
I just
and
have such a hard time like rationalizing that with how
oh, I know.
valuable quarterback is
I
to the overall
I
product.
agree.
Like I would
Yeah.
say they're neck and neck, but valuable. I mean, without him, it all falls apart. So yes, I agree with you.
I was
I
yes.
just I just want him to get the recognition that he
Shador is the
deserves.
most valuable player on this team.
Oh
Like
yeah,
we saw
yeah.
if Travis isn't 100%, you can almost beat K-State and you can roll past Arizona.
Should have beat K
It
State.
You're right. But they didn't. But you know what I mean? Without him, basically, they almost beat K-State and they rolled past Arizona. If you don't have Shador, you're getting rolled by K-State and you may not win at Arizona.
Well, we all know
So
what happens if
yeah,
they
so
don't
he
have
he's
Shedeur.
he's the most valuable, but Travis
Yes,
is
Travis
the
is the
best
best.
player. It's
Travis,
just it just blows my mind that there's a list of top 10 here and Shador's not even on the list. Like,
it's to me is I'm with you, buddy. That's why I brought it up the other night. It's why I've been talking about it. It's I just would like him to get the recognition he deserves because he
yeah,
deserves it. And
yeah,
he's going to go down as Colorado's best quarterback to have ever played in the program. It's not going to be
yeah,
close. All due respect to everybody who's come before, because there have been some good ones.
yeah,
And I have high opinions of a lot of the guys who have played there. Shedeur is the best thrower of the football that has ever worn the black and gold. He
yeah,
stands alone, point blank, period.
yeah,
And I just would wish that he would get that respect because it wasn't. Now, let me ask you this. When was the last time you had teammates that were finalists in New York? My point is this. I think he ought to be in New York because he's there anyway. But to your point, his presence may water it down. That doesn't mean that he still doesn't deserve to be there, though, to me.
yeah,
And I guess it just depends. And you brought up a really good point, I thought, to me the other night when you said, look, it's typically the top quarterbacks. And right now, what Cam Ward's undefeated, right? And
yeah,
so is Dylan Gabriel.
yeah,
So, I mean, that's if you're going to weigh wins as a quarterback stat, then those two guys would be above him right now.
yeah,
That's just the truth.
yeah, yeah. And it's an interesting question. The last time teammates like Reggie Bush and
Matt
Matt
Leinart.
Leinart were both
Yeah.
down there. I assume has Alabama had
Jason
that?
Jason White, Adrian Peterson. Were the same year or no?
Maybe.
Was
I can't remember.
it was AP's freshman year, right?
Yeah.
I think he was a finalist with Jason White because Jason White won it that year,
Okay.
if memory serves. But since then, it
Who
hasn't happened in a long time.
who was the oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name. The receiver just a couple years ago from Alabama that won it. With the Eagles.
Devontae Smith.
Yeah. His
Yeah,
quarterback was Tua, right?
yeah, they might have been.
They might have been down there together, but
They might.
it's
Anyway, it just
it's
hasn't happened.
rare. But think about the examples we're talking about. Is USC was the absolute number one team in the country. Alabama was, a college football playoff team. I don't remember if they were number one or not, but that Oklahoma team with Jason White, Adrian Peterson was an elite team. So yeah, to get two down there in New York, they typically have what 3, 4 guys in there
I
that
think it would probably
they
be
get
four.
invited.
I think it'd probably be four.
It's probably
I
four because
just
yeah,
yeah.
but the way Shador gets in there is if Miami slips up a time or two, and Oregon slips up a time or two. Like you don't even need both of them, but like if Miami loses a couple games, then Shador maybe gets up in there. But
Well, I thought Coach Prime brought up a really good point the other night when he said, "Hey, what's the criteria?" Like, I think we just
yeah,
need to focus on the criteria here. The
right,
top player in college football is Travis Hunter. The
right,
fact that we're even having these conversations, for us, for posturing purposes and recognition purposes, guess what? Shador's probably going to be in New York anyway.
right,
Okay, I mean, let's one way or another with Travis to support
right,
Travis, even if
right.
he's not a
Oh, he
finalist.
he will be there.
Kind of my
Yeah,
point, right?
yeah,
It's kind of my point. But if they win 10, again, I think Prime should be the coach of the year. I think they should both be in New York. By the way, I'm booking flights for that. I've already started looking into it. Might as well get them on the books. I can always cancel them, but I'm booking flights for that. It's the 14th of December. I'm pretty sure is the ceremony. You
Yeah.
might want to do that. Might want to get on it. Anyway, the only other thing I was going to say is I loved what Coach Prime's point was. He was like, we need to look at this criteria because I think if you were to ask Heisman voters, you would get different answers when you ask them, what is the criteria of this award? Because a
Right.
lot of people say it's the best player on the best team. That's not the definition of the criteria, but that might be the more common definition among sports discourse, right? The best player on the best team. It's just the best player.
Yeah.
That really hasn't how it's been awarded. But
Mhm.
by true spirit of the award,
Yeah.
there is one that stands alone on the mountaintop as far as this year's class, and it's Travis
Right.
Hunter.
Right.
So if he stays healthy, Brian, and they win 10, I'd be very surprised if he doesn't end up with it.
The funny thing about these odds is that I think the two best candidates, to me, the two clear cut favorites are him and Genty, and they're 3 and 4 in these odds. Like, because you have to put
Just had a,
quarterbacks up there.
I just had a brain blast. If Travis Hunter doesn't win it and it's not going to go to
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders, this is what I want. I want Dylan Gabriel to win it, and I want the 1v12 or however it's going to work out that Colorado gets Oregon in the second round of the CFP, and then we'll
Yeah.
sell it on the field. I think that would be the best way for this season to end up. If Oregon
Yeah.
went undefeated, then got knocked out by CU in the college football playoff, that would be everybody's Super Bowl. You wouldn't have to do anything else. That would be it,
Yeah.
man. Just go streaking at that point.
I got a quick comment on, I have a comment on that, but real quick, as far as Heisman Trophy, the definition I go by, and I'm a Heisman voter, is it says on the trophy, most outstanding player, college football player. That's the definition. It says it on the trophy. So, real quick, to your point, could you imagine? Okay, we're going to end on this. They're the 12th seed. They go to Oregon 1 seed in the college football playoff and beat them about 14 months after being in Eugene and Coach Prime having that famous get us now because this is as bad as we're going to be. And if he can go back to Eugene and pull off that upset, I mean, that's a mic drop, isn't it?
Denzel is still young enough to play him in the movie. That's what would happen. Okay. I saw him yelling at the paparazzi in that viral video the other day,
Yeah.
telling him, hey, I'll come get you when I come out of the restaurant.
Yeah.
He's still got it. He could remember the Titans this thing again, reprise the role. He's
Yeah.
playing Othello 50 years after he debuted on Broadway. I just saw the other day. Hey,
Yeah.
let's reprise the role. Remember the Buffs.
Yeah.
That's what it would be. However, obviously, look,
Yeah.
how about they go beat Texas Tech? Let's have
Yeah.
everybody get healthy. Go beat Texas Tech next week.
That's the main thing. But that dream world of like, you go back to Autzen in the college football playoff and beat them a little more than a year after what they did to you up there.
Come on, storybook stuff.
That's storybook stuff.
Yep.
But hey, what's not storybook stuff is
Who's
I
gonna
turned
play
50
you in
tomorrow.
the movie?
Some old fart, that's for sure. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah,
Appreciate
of
it. We'll
course.
see you this
Happy
week.
birthday, buddy.
Thank
Are
you.
we? Am I going to see you on your birthday or no? Not this week.
No, I think the day after my birthday.
The day after. Well, good. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to see you on your any. I saw you the day before.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, I saw the day before. Happy
Awesome.
birthday, Brian.
Thanks, Matt. We'll see y'all soon.